In episode 47, the story begins at the Black Pyramid. So in the tomb chamber, we have Slice, the leader of the mutants, Munkin, and Jalkaman. So what Jalkaman wanted to know, why has Mumm-ra has summoned them for that time? Well, according to Mumm-ra, he just told the mutants that he's going to teach them a lesson. So to demonstrate this was when Mumm-ra had the mutants look in the cauldron to find out why they failed. So flashback, we go back to episode 12 when at the time that Lionel, Snarf, and Chitara were on Mount Anguish. Then another flashback was from episode 28 when at the time that Snarf was growing bigger in size, and that's with thanks to his tail, he whacked them off the drawbridge. So back to the present! So, in the Pyramid's tomb chamber, that's when Mumm-ra continued to plead a case to the mutants to say, there's only one creature, and I'm the one to get rid of those Thundercats and etc. Now, you're probably wondering what was Mumm-ra's plan this time. I'll explain it later, but first of all, one of the first things he did is just like what any bad guy would do, transform into his monstrous form, of course. Now that part's finished, all Mumm-ra need next is a disguise. And what better way to do it than with a Robear Berbil, one of the Thundercats' friends. Of course, that's the mutants' first time that they've ever seen a disguise like that. So what did Mumm-ra do? Now as a Robear Berbil, all he has to do now is to go plan any other plan. So he heads off. So meanwhile, Snarf was busy running until he saw Berbil that just fell out of the tree. When he looked over his shoulder, he ran over to see what was going on. So he ran to where the Berbil had landed. He asked him, "Are you okay?" Well, the Berbil apologized for falling out of the tree, but he hurt his arm when he fell. Well, according to Snarf, when he pleaded his case to say, "You've hurt my head when you landed on me, by the looks of it," he said. So what Snarf did is that he has the Burble stand up and it says, "Don't worry, I'll take you to the lair. The Thundercats will take very good care of you," he said. But then, well, Snarf doesn't even realize it yet, but that Burble was Mumm-ra in disguise. So later that night at Cat's Lair, I guess it is confirmed that Snarf had told the others what is going on, and they just let in the Burble. So Panther, Chitara, and Tiger were there in the guest room, and they told the Burble if there's anything that he needs, they'll be there. And the Burble says, "Thanks, Thundercats." Before heading off, they also agreed to take the Burble to the village the very next morning, and so they head off. Well, before Snarf can leave the room, he apologized to the Burble for Lionel not showing up is because he's been camping at the time. So after he turns the light off, he left the room. So the Burble's now all by himself, but still, neither Snarf nor the Thundercats knew that the Burble was really Mumm-ra in disguise. So later in the guest room, what Mumm-ra disguised as the Burble did is that he sat up and Bear took off all the bandages in his sling. Next thing he did is that he called upon the spirit of evil to give him another disguise, an energy bat, of course. And why not? Panthro hates bats as well as spiders. So Mumm-ra in disguise as an energy bat went on with his first step of the plan. So meanwhile, in the Kessler's control room, there's Panthro, and he's all by himself. So what Panthro did first is that he checked all the perimeters of the cat's lair, but so far nothing, or so he thought. But then Panthro should have realized that he wasn't alone, because inside the exact same control room is the energy bat that Panthro's never seen before, but he fears of it. He dreads it. So, back with Panthro, he went one-on-one with the energy bat. It was nothing he ever seen before. So, the battle between him and the energy bat went on and on and on and on and on. But no matter what Panthro did, he just couldn't make the energy bat go away. What is going on here? But then, Panthro doesn't realize it yet, but the energy bat was Mumm-ra in disguise. Oh, about that plan I was telling you about? Well, guess what happened? He made Panthro his first slave, with a slave bracelet, of course. So, long story short, meanwhile, in the Thunder Kitten's room, that's when Wily Kid told her brother that if Lionel should go camping, then so should they. So, they made a tent of their own. But what the Thunderkins didn't even realize is that while they were busy playing, that's because they had no idea that they weren't alone. Because moments ago, Panthro just entered their room. So what Panthro did after he entered the Thunderkins' room, he tipped over the bed. Well, Thunderkins had no idea what is going on. Well, luckily for Wily Cat, she has a flashlight, and there she sees Panther was standing there, and so did her brother. So she says to Panther, "What is going on with you?" But when Panther didn't answer, that's when they should have realized, the Thunderkins that is, that Panther wasn't alone because someone else was with him, and that someone was Mumm-ra. So what Mumm-ra did first is that he attacked the Thunderkins, but luckily they dodged the attack. Wily Cat, who's Wily Kit's brother, was asking Panther to help them, but he didn't say a word and just stands there. The long story short, when Mumm-ra looks at Panther, who's now a slave at the moment, he says, "Well, what are you waiting for?" And so Panther heads off. So back with Panther, he did what he was supposed to do. And guess what he did? He pulled out a couple of slave bracelets. So when the kitten says, "We're not going to be waiting around much longer," so they ran off. And just when they're about to leave, the slave bracelets were on them. So you know what this means. They're now slaves, just like what Panthro did. So meanwhile, in Chitara's room, when Chitara woke up and heard a noise coming from in the Thunder Kitten's room, and she had no idea what was going on. So, when she ran out of the hallway, what she did is that she went into the Thunder Kitten's room. So, when Chitara arrives at the kitten's room, at first she found it weird that it was empty. But then she soon realizes that she wasn't alone because Panther and the kittens are with her and they're slaves, which she wasn't aware of. So Panther asked Chitara, "Are you looking for us?" As a matter of fact, "I did," Chitara said. Then she asked, "What's going on here? I thought a tornado has hit in this place." But then she at first decided to think nothing of it, and then she says, "Oh, I get it. The lightning scared you, right?" And but instead of answering Chitara's question, that's when Panther pushed the button to close the door. And she says, "What happened?" But before she can get an answer, that's when she didn't notice that Mumm-ra's behind her. Then Mumm-ra had pleaded a case to Chitara to say, "Don't worry, you'll know soon enough." So meanwhile in the hallway we have Snarf with a flashlight. Now he found this very weird to find out why all the lights are out. And that's when before you know it, he turns around and he accidentally ran into Tigra. So Tigra asked him, "What are you doing here?" And Snarf says, "Well, I came to check up to see how the Berbil's doing, but then I heard a commotion going on." "Well, I didn't hear anything," Tigra said. "Besides, your Berbil friend is in the other direction." "I know that," Snarf says, and so he heads off. So what Snarf did is that he checked into the guest room to see if the Berbil that he took in was there. But he found it weird that it was empty. So what Snarf found was just a bunch of bandages, and he found it also weird. And he couldn't help but think to himself, did the Berbil get better fast, or it might be something else, or should we say someone else? So back with Tigra, he's in the main hall room. That was until he saw Snarf falling down the stairs and with a bunch of bandages. At first, Tigra was going to attack, but then Snarf says, "Wait a minute, it's me." "Oh, sorry about that," Tigra says. And then he had a suspicious thought that something weird is going on. And what's even weirder is that, according to Tigra, he said that Panther, the Thunderkins, and Chitara were missing, and he had no idea why. Then Snarf has his turn to plead his case to say, "If you think that's weird, our Berbil friend is missing too." So back with Tigra and Snarf, even though Tigra had no idea what's going on in his head, but all he can tell Snarf is that He couldn't help but ask himself, is this Berbil really a friend of theirs, or it might be something else, or someone else? Then Snarf asked Tiger a question. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Exactly what I was thinking, Tiger said, and that's when. You've heard right, Snarf have heard of Tiger's confirmation that that Berbil was a fake. He was really Mumm-ra in disguise. So after Snarf had found out about Tiger's confirmation is indeed correct, then he was worried and says, "Oh dear, I wish Lionel were here right now." But then suddenly, Tiger and Snarf just heard a voice from nearby saying, "What's he gonna do about it?" That's when Snarf and Tiger are face to face with Mumm-ra. So Tiger told Snarf while Snarf's behind him. He said, "Go, get out of here. I'll try to hold him off," he said, and so Snarf heads off. So on Snarf's way out, that's when he saw Panther and Wily Cat, who's Wily Kit's brother. And when he tried to run the other direction, he has seen Chitara and Wily Kit, who's Wily Cat's sister. So now that Snarf's all surrounded and no place else to go, he notices there's only one way out, the window. So Snarf went out the window. So meanwhile, back with Snarf, who had made his escape from Cat's lair, he was looking for Lino. So long story short, back with Tiger, bad news for him. He's now become a slave just like all the others did. And that's when Mumm-ra had pleaded the case to tell Snarf to bring his master right here. Well, back with Snarf, with good news, he found Lino, and though it is confirmed that Snarf just told Lino what had happened. Well, Lino had pleaded his case with Snarf to say, "I'm glad you found me when you did, because I would have joined the others if you hadn't," he said. Now, according to Lionel, he told Snarf that it's now time to rescue them. But according to Snarf, he says, "Well, the last time I saw them, it seems to me they don't want to be rescued after all," he said. Well, Lionel agrees with Snarf, but then pleads his case. It's only Mumm-ra's spell that they're under. After all, our friends are the Thundercats, and we'll have to rescue them, whether they like it or they don't. And of course, according to what Lionel says in his case, there's nothing that Mumm-ra will do to change that. So Lionel says that in his case that there's no time to lose, and so both he and Snarf head off back to Cat's lair. So meanwhile at Cat's lair, now don't ask me how the Thundercats, Lionel and Snarf had managed to go inside the Thunder Tank's garage, but that's how they got inside. So the plan, well, according to Lionel, he just told Snarf that they had to surprise his friends before they can surprise them. So after leaving the Thunder Tank's garage, both Lionel and Snarf head upstairs. And then the next thing they did is they searched from Tiger's lab. That was right after Snarf had pleaded the case that the Thundercats were there right before they left. And now they're not there. So after pleading a case from Lionel to say there's no telling what Mama had did with them, and so both he and Snarf left Tiger's lab. So back with Lionel and Snarf, they went to the other side of the room where they looked into Chitara's room first. Then they went to Panthro's room, and then the Thunder Kitten's room, but they're all empty. Now this is really weird because according to Lionel, he told Snarf, "Don't worry, we'll find them." "I hope so," Snarf says, "because if we do, we're not going to find them with glowing red eyes around," he said. So Lionel made a suggestion. He says, "Listen, we'll cover more ground if we split up. I'll check the control room, you check the sword chamber, and we'll be back at the hangar in half an hour. And let me know if you find something." And so they head off. So anyway, back with Lionel, he went ahead to do some investigating in the control room. So that's what he did. Well, back with Snarf, although we didn't see it, but it is confirmed that he's been to the store chamber and back. So now he's going to the control room to join up with Lionel. Well, speaking of Lionel, he's still in the control room, and that's when he saw Snarf behind him. So Lionel says, "Let me guess, you didn't find him either, right?" "As a matter of fact, I did," Snarf says, when he just let slip to Lionel. Also, it's confirmed that Mumm-ra made him a slave just like all the Thundercats did. So Snarf also let slip to Lionel that everybody's going to do what Mumm-ra tells them to do, and that would include Lionel himself. And before you know it, Lionel's being attacked. But Lionel also realizes that Snarf wasn't alone because all of his friends are with him and they have the same glowing red eyes as he did. So long story short, outside of Castle's Mumm-ra, and he just pleaded a case to Lionel to say, well, 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 it looks like your friends had turned against you, he said. So meanwhile, in the Castler's control room is Lionel against his own friends, and he doesn't want to hurt either one of them. For him, this is bad news. And if that's not bad enough, they're all under Mumm-ra's spell. And as anyone would tell you, it's all part of the plan. Anyway, luckily for Lionel, he has his claw shield with him. And he had no idea what is going on, but he knows he has to come up with a plan quick. Then Lionel, before he left the lair, he pleaded himself a case to say, I don't want to hurt you, I must find a way to help you, there's no way I can use my sword, and etc. So Lionel knew what to do, so he ran out. So back with Lionel, long story short, after he left Castlear, he was all alone, or so he thought, until something or someone attacked him from behind, and when he turned around, he's face to face with Mumm-ra himself. So although, despite the fact that Lionel had been shot in the shoulder by Mumm-ra's power, but he'll be alright, that's when Mumm-ra pleaded his case to say, nothing's gonna stop my vengeful force and etc. Well, long story short, the battle between Lionel and Mumm-ra went on and on and on and on and on. But things were looking bad for Lionel. That was until, luckily for him, he dodges the sword's attack. Well, Mumm-ra couldn't believe what he just seen. He was in shock. So long story short, things are looking bad for Lionel. That was until when Mumm-ra pleaded his case to say that his sword's no match for him, but Lionel says no, but your reflection will. But not so fast. According to Mumm-ra, he has those special goggles, and he just let slip in front of Lionel to say, well, unlike those mutants, I'm one step ahead of you, he said. Well, things look pretty bad. And if things weren't bad enough, according to Mumm-ra, he just pleaded his case to Lionel to say there is no reflection, nothing's going to save you, and etc. So, just when things are looking bad, guess what? Lionel did what any good guy would do. He uses his Thundercat signal from his sword, so that's what he did. Well, back with the Thundercats, who are still Mumm-ra's slaves, but not anymore, because the first one to break the slave bracelet was Tigra, the moment he saw the signal. The next four that saw the signal and also broke off the slave bracelets were Panthro, Chitara, and the Thunder Kittens. And of course, yes, you've heard right, Lionel got all his friends back except for Snarf, but we'll get back to him later. So now that all of Lionel's friends except for Snarf are no longer slaves, they left from the front of the cat's lair and they are now on their way to help Lionel. So speaking of Lionel back with him, he continues to have a one-on-one battle with Mumm-ra and with what else his sword, of course. And the fight continues to go on and on and on and on and on. But then, when Mumm-ra looked over his shoulder, it's the Thundercats. The first one up is Tigra, who told him that the party's over, creep. Well, Tigra went one-on-one with Mumm-ra first, but Mumm-ra still had no idea that thanks to the Thundercat signal from Lionel's sword, the cats are not slaves anymore. So next up is Chitara. She too goes one-on-one with Mumm-ra, just like what Tigra did. Well, long story short, Mumm-ra is now on his back thanks to Chitara's baton. So next up is Panthro. So what Panthro did is that he grabbed Mumm-ra's feet. Next are the Thunderkins, and they just grabbed his arms. The last thing that Wily Cat did was to remove the goggles that Mumm-ra was wearing. So Mumm-ra was screaming, no! And that's when Lionel went forward with his sword. Remember the reflection from the sword that didn't work the first time? But this time it worked. You know what the saying is? The second time's charm. So, yes, it's true. Mumm-ra almost made all the Thundercats slaves, but that plan backfired. So, Lionel told his friends to let him go. And so, now back to his mummified form, Mumm-ra's now all upset because he almost had all the Thundercats. And he would have too if it wasn't for Lionel and his sword. So before Mumm-ra can head back to his pyramid, now once again humiliated, he says, "This is only a setback, but every time we meet, I'll learn more. Then someday I will prevail." So after that, he flies off. So back inside Kessler, Tigra went first to speak in his case to thank Lionel for everything that he did. Then Chitara, who agrees with Tigra, said that none of this would have been possible if it wasn't for Lionel. He's truly needed when it counts. Then suddenly Snarf shows up. Told you we'd get back to him later. He's still under Mumm-ra's power, but not for long. So what Lionel did is he picked up Snarf, and it's up to Panther to break off the slave bracelet from Snarf's tail. So yep, you've heard right. Now that the bracelet's been removed thanks to Panthro, Snarf is back to normal. Of course, now that Snarf's back to normal, and he's not kidding when he just said, "With friends like us, who would need an enemy?" So you know what this means. The Thundercats are now back to normal. So that ends episode 47.